It's a pleasure having all of you, sir, here. It's an interesting topic, cockpit of the future. It brings back memories about the first car that we had in our family back in Allahabad. It was a Premier Padmini. Barely anything to call it a cockpit or anything. There was no air conditioning either, bare bones music system. Then the first car that I bought, a Santro, 20 years back, it basically had just AC and a FM tuner. Cut to today, the kind of cars that we see, it started off with maybe a 5-inch LCD or LED screen, which has now gone bigger and bigger and bigger. And as probably autonomous car takes off, we will probably not need a steering wheel anymore, neither a windshield probably, and the screen will only get bigger and bigger and probably occupy the entire cabin of the car. So on that note, it is a fascinating experience to just imagine what could happen inside the car. How could the cabin of a car be like? And to put some thoughts together, let me start off with Tapan-san. You represent Maruti Suzuki. I think you are at the forefront of all the changes that are happening in the industry. How do you think the cabin of the future car will look like?
Thank you, Sumant, for the nice way of introducing the future of cockpit with your personal experience. I think when we consider how the future of cockpit or interiors is going to evolve, I look at 5 key aspects. What I term them as the 5 C's. The first is, I think, customer expectation. Today, a lot of design, whether it is exterior, interior, connectivity, etc., is being driven by the customer expectations. Customer expectations are changing. We have lot more younger consumers, consumers who are connected, consumers who are intelligent, who are tech savvy, and who want a host of features, starting from the smallest of the cars to the large cars. So first is customer centricity. So customer expectation is going to drive the future cockpit design and future. The second aspect is carbon neutrality. When you talk of a cockpit, it gives you a lot of information about the vehicle prime mover, whether it is IC engine, whether it is a CNG engine, or whether it is a hybrid vehicle or electric vehicle. So that's the second thing which is going to impact the cockpit design in a big way. Because the kind of information that you get from the vehicle or from the powertrain and you display to the customer is going to be different because the prime mover or the powertrains are going to be different. The third aspect is connectivity. As you would have seen in our life, we are now all connected, whether it be at home, be it at office, be it on the move. And therefore, the connectivity of various features, various information through the speedometer, through the digital displays, like you said, 7-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, is the third factor which is going to drive the future cockpit. The fourth factor is comfort and convenience. You talked of AC, there could be many more things. So, comfort, the convenience that they want it to be like their own, household. So, kind of ambient lighting, all these things are going to be driven also by, to drive the cockpit of future. But the fifth and most important factor, as designers and engineers, what I see, the fifth C, is about the cognitive load. When we design the future cockpit, we can't just load a host of information to the consumer, and therefore make their brain become much more complex and doesn't work sometimes. So you become confused. So that is also something to be taken care of. So these 5 C's, customer expectations, the carbon neutrality, connectivity, comfort and convenience, and cognitive load are the 5 factors which I consider are going to really drive the future of cockpit design.
Tapan-san, what you did with a comprehensive answer like that, all of these questions have become redundant now because you've answered all of them in one go. So I'll have to think of new questions so that we can bring in some more topics on the table. Mr. Khokar, if I come to you.
Yes.
They said that the car of the future will drive on software. And so it will generate gigabytes of data. And in turn, it would mean that most of the data will obviously be generated through the cockpit itself, which means that the automotive company of today has to also be a software company of tomorrow. How are you making this transition at Tata Motors?
Yeah, I think before I come to Tata Motors, but in general, doesn't matter which automotive OEM it is, this is reality which is we are now trying to understand. So we have heard so many manifestations that the car is nothing but an iPhone on four wheels, and now it is software-driven vehicles. And so the word software is becoming akin to daily, daily working at any automotive OEM. And so interesting comparisons that, technology now needs over 100 million lines of code, and compare that with the Dreamliner, Jetliner, it's 10 times more. So the automotive, yes, is getting very, very complex. The data handling of, especially when it comes to giving safety kind of information, let's say autonomous driving, which is still far away. But the journey has begun. There's humongous amount of data handling that needs to be done. The connectivity between the vehicle to the network edge, to the cloud, all these are going to play a massive role. So I think transformation of the automotive industry moving into software is a must, because the experiences, the dynamism, which is coming in from the consumer electronic industry, the expectation of the end customer is that it should also be so in the automotive world. Because when you are in office, you are in a very environment which is tech enabled. When you're at home, you are in an environment which is tech enabled. When you're traveling, that 1 hour journey to and fro, if that environment is not tech enabled and of a similar kind, you will feel, okay, it's pretty archaic where I am. So customer expectations are driving that the automotive industry, consumer electronic industry are actually melting. And this melting or converging that is happening forces automotive OEMs to think differently, and hence the great push coming to to get software capable. Coming to Tata Motors in particular, we have made out our plans as to how we will get ready to offer the best experiences to our customers. And software per se is not new to the Tata Group. So we are pretty strong, in Tata Group companies, which we can leverage to offer that as to get the initial start for us, which will be so that is our plan, that we need to get ready for this so-called 5G world, which is coming our way. And that is going to force a lot of consumer electronic things at a rapid pace to get introduced in our vehicles.
So to understand what happens to the cabin next, keep an eye out on the telecom story in India. That 5G, 6G, I don't know what else will come, and each of that leap will change your car as well. Mr. Iyer, you are a relatively household name as far as infotainment system is concerned at HARMAN. Give us some idea about what we can see in the future. How different will the cockpit be from today to maybe 10 years down the line?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Firstly, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. So I think when we talk about the evolution of the cockpit going forward, I think it will happen in multiple stages. And we have a vision of what that might look like in the short to medium term, and then what it might look like further down the line. In the short to medium term, our view, and tying on to what Mr. Randeep said, is that a software-defined vehicle is the largest mobile device in the world, and we believe in that quite strongly. And if we can sort of even momentarily believe that to be to be true, then to begin with, the experience in the cockpit should be at least as capable as what we get, through a mobile device. And so, the way we are looking at it at HARMAN is really looking at how we can enable our customers to have a consumer electronics grade experience, but at an automotive scale and grade. Right? So that means many things, and just to give a few, let's say, concrete examples of where I think the cockpit is going, and for us to get any, have any kind of confidence in terms of these predictions, I think it's really important to align with the customer experience. I think the first C that Mr. Sahoo mentioned, right? So what are the expectations of the youth of today, the customers of tomorrow, and how we can prepare the cockpits of tomorrow to meet those needs? So in my opinion, I think there are 4 key areas. One is connectivity. I think we spoke a lot about it in previous sessions, even a little bit in this session, but I want to offer a slightly different perspective, right? So when we talk about connectivity, we're talking about really, an individual staying connected with the rest of the world while driving, right? So traditionally that's been a challenge because you're keeping your eyes on the road and you should be your hands on the wheel, which makes it difficult to interact with the rest of the world, especially the digital or virtual world. So there are a lot of technologies which are coming which are going to make that possible, right? So how we interact with the system today or the cockpits of today is mostly through touch. So that's going to change, more voice activated, more VPAs, more gesture based. So if you just wave your hands, things will happen. We spoke about the usage of displays and windshields. So things like heads-up display where you will have augmented reality on the screen, but it will still allow you to focus on the road. V2X capabilities that will make your driving experience much more safe, knowing that even if you are not necessarily fully paying attention, which you should, there is capabilities that within the car that will protect you from things that maybe you can't even see and experience. So I think that's one aspect. The second aspect is around personalization. I think hyper-personalization. Right? Today, everything that we do, that we experience is customized and curated for us as an individual, right? So the one-size-fits-all paradigm of the past, I think, is no longer valid, certainly not now, and certainly not going forward. So how can we build those kind of highly personalized experiences? And when I say personalized, again, slightly different take on it, right? One is the aspect of personalizing the experience for a driver, but the other aspect is around the personalization of the experience for the other people who are in the car, right? So your co-passenger, people in the back seat, right? How can we provide an experience to them that meets their needs? Now, when I'm driving, my wife is there, my kids are there. All of us want to do different things. We want to listen to different music, but invariably we listen to whatever my kids want to listen to. Now, for me, it's not a problem because my kids have better taste in music than me. But in many cases, it may be a problem. So how can we create this concept of individualized sound zones? How can we bring in the concept of let's say, more screens, or even bring your own devices that will allow you to have a more personalized experience, irrespective of where you're sitting? We spoke a little bit about shared mobility. Maybe it's becoming a little less popular than people had anticipated earlier, but I do think it will pick up. Now, if I don't own my own car, but I still want to have a personalized experience, then it's really important that my experience can move from one vehicle to another seamlessly. I think personalization is another important topic. Intelligent, right? We want our systems, anything we interact with in the world, to be intelligent. We have intelligent toasters, intelligent light bulbs, intelligent vacuum cleaners. Why not intelligent cars? So I think it is just a matter of time. The car needs to know us. AI/ML technologies are becoming much more prevalent. The car needs to understand our needs, and react in a manner that suits our needs. The concept of augmented reality is also so interesting for that reason, right? It upgrades your experience by providing intelligence. So you're driving down the street, you see landmarks. There is information about them. You can interact with it. You can purchase a ticket to a movie theater if you like on the fly. So there's a whole host of opportunities over there. And lastly, I think is just about how consumers consume data today, which has changed completely from how we used to consume data, and definitely our ancestors used to consume data. Everything is on demand. Information is required at our fingertips, and we cannot wait for anything. So how do we keep the experience in the car not just relevant today, but then relevant going forward, is an extremely important topic. So this concept of upgradability, not just of hardware, but also, not just of software, but also of hardware, and how the experience can go on evolving over time, I think is also another interesting aspect that certainly we are looking at, and I think in general the community is also looking at. So, sorry, a little lengthy answer, but there's a lot going on in this area.
I wish the cockpit of the future also made us intelligent drivers, but let's see if that is possible or not. But then, how does it work? Is it companies like you that are innovating and going to the OEM saying this is the fantastic thing that we have innovated upon, and would you like to have it? Or is it the OEMs who are telling you that, oh, I want that because based on our consumer feedback, this is what customers are asking for, so you do it for us? Is it your way, or is it their way still?
No, I think it's not a one-way street. I think it's an entirely collaborative process. There is definitely a lot of thought that we are, thought, and not just thought, but also investments into R&D and research that we are making on our end in these areas, and so are the OEMs, to be perfectly honest. So I think it's a collaborative thing. Ultimately, I think it's, we can try to complicate this as much as we like, but the simple truth is we want to sell our products and OEMs want to sell their cars. So I think we both have a common goal, and if we can put our minds and ideas together, I think we can more easily achieve that goal.
Right. Mr. Verma, let me bring you into the topic here. Obviously, one of the biggest changes that we have seen is maps coming into the car, and that has really made our lives more convenient. But at the same time, there are some who feel, I'm not talking about maps alone, that there is maybe too much happening inside the car now, that it probably becomes a distraction. There is a music going on, there is some video playing on, there is maybe messages coming in, you are responding to those messages through voice activated commands. There is Alexa saying something. There is probably a map also telling you that there's congestion ahead. So much happening inside the car. Do you feel that we are maybe doing a little too much?
I think that's a really great question, and I mean, when the top two manufacturers of the Indian industry are sitting next to me, I think that they have explained very nicely customer expectation and also cognitive load. I think that's what Tapan San had also mentioned. So it's very important, and it's highly topical, this automotive experience is what you're saying. It's very important that we stitch together the experience of the user. And the users are multiple. There's the driver, there's the passenger, there's also potentially the rear seat owner of the vehicle if it's a chauffeur-driven vehicle. It's very important that we stitch together the experiences such that there's no cognitive load, but also that there's maximum utility or convenience. And really that comes down to how the OEM, along with their suppliers, are working very closely together to customize that experience, as opposed to it being a series of disconnected experiences. And so that should address this problem of having too much happening in a disconnected way. It's actually, it has to be, people have to very closely collaborate. And so, for example, between us and HARMAN, when we work together for the OEMs, we very closely collaborate for kind of creating these continuous experiences. But also I want to say one thing, that if we are trying to design the cockpit for the future, remember, people buying a car today will be owning that car for 10 years. And so they will be, for better or worse, stuck with that car, right? And so it's very important that, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line, they feel that that car has still stayed current with them. And what the smartphone did was disrupt or to open up the eyes of users to what can happen if the gadget is highly capable and highly connected. So, what the OEMs have done in the last few years is bring connectivity as a base infrastructure. I think this is something that people were crying out for. But remember, connectivity in the car cannot be super high speed, super high bandwidth, super high data rates, because that also costs a lot. There needs to also be certain built-in storage and compute capability in the cockpit of the car that OEMs will have to provision for. Today, the way smartphones really took off when there was a base level of infrastructure in the smartphone, keeping it too light, over optimizing for minimizing the capability at this stage will essentially ensure that the cockpit in 3 years or 4 years down the line will start becoming redundant, and then people will not find the car to be that exciting. So I just want to kind of highlight that very important thing that the OEMs need to be thinking about, and I see that very strongly and very positively, that kind of being kept in mind by the OEMs. And then later I'll talk about kind of what are the cool things that can happen if these kind of base things on user experience, contiguous experiences, and highly capable and connected cockpits are there.
I think it's a very important point that the car has to stay relevant for the entire lifespan. So 10 years, 12 years, it may change hands, but whatever you are putting in today, it has to be relevant till 2035, and who knows what technologies would come in 2030. So it's a difficult task to do. Mr. Khokar and Tapan San, do you think when we think about the buying pattern of a vehicle for consumers, we know that exterior styling is very important, price, your mileage, fuel efficiency, and people do look at how good the car looks from inside, but I do not think it is there yet. Do you think that is changing? And do you think consumers are now saying that, oh, I want a very swanky looking interior with a lot of connectivity options, and if you provide me that, then I will buy your car over the rival? Do you think it is becoming a USP for vehicles now, or are we still some way off?
If I may start, I think जैसे बोलते हैं जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. So exterior styling is extremely important. I think that's what customers first see. But at the same time, if you compare the time, 1% actual visibility of the exterior versus 99% staying inside the car, it's extremely important that the car is comfortable, it's connected, and it's there for the customer. And therefore, what the change that we see is that today it's not only the design but also the features, equipments, and the additional comfort and convenience things which are giving inside the car is becoming very, very important. So from a consumer perspective, definitely interior styling, interior design, equipments, features, connectivity is as equally important as the exterior design of the cars. And we definitely see a changing trend there. We'd like to add.
Yeah, sure. See, actually, when you talk in terms of customer experience, I mean, what is an experience? When a person is sitting inside the car, you are the senses of the human, they come into play. So what are those senses? I mean, it's what you see, I mean, what you hear, and what you feel, okay? And also what you smell. So I think these four senses, if you can create a combination which is appealing, you've achieved it. Now this is when you're inside the car. Now all these senses, if you break it down now to a technical level, all this information is available in an analog form. Okay, so you need to convert this analog information into digital. You got to process it in a digital manner, and then again reconvert it back into analog and present it to the end user. So why I'm trying to break this down to the next level of detail is, one is the aesthetics look of it. The other is the functional aspect of it. So if you want to really appeal, you need to get high processing compute. into the vehicle. And not only so that all this information can be really uh, uh, displayed. For example, ultimately you'll show it in the form of something on the screens. Easily you're able to hit around 10 screens or 10 displays inside a car. Even the mirrors are now, the external outer rear view mirrors are also becoming digital in nature. They are like screens inside the vehicle. So there is a lot of data processing which needs to be done, high compute required. Now, see, the dilemma of the automotive industry is when you make a vehicle, you are typically starting off 3 years before start of production, and the vehicle has a life of around 7 to 8 years. Now, for an OEM to be able to foresee what's going to be happening uh, for those so many years during life cycle of a vehicle, the vehicle should not feel dated. After 3 years of usage, coming to what you explained, there needs to be something. And think he was imploring me indirectly, give some, like we are used to at doing at home. You have PCs at home. You want to add a memory. We used to just go and buy a memory card and put it into the motherboard. Remember? So that is going on even now. So those kind of, I think, capability needs to be available inside the vehicle, where you can easily update the car, not only through software updates but also hardware updates, so that the newness continues to be there, so that the experience doesn't become aged over time. I think if we can crack that, an OEM does not know in 6 years time what's going to be required, because you're starting -3, remember? So at +3 years of usage, what is going to be that required? So if I can have some kind of provisions in place inside the vehicle, then I would have been able to ensure that the ultimate customer experience is still going to be possible. So ultimately, the first C, to come back from where Tapan started off the whole thing, keeping that as an aim, what are the underlying layers which will allow that to happen? High processing compute is definitely one of them we can't ignore. So it's this concept of centralized controllers, domain controllers, all that is coming in. Nikhil can speak a lot on that topic. So mantra is experience. You got to sense the experience, make it displayed and felt, and then allow it technically to happen. So this, whichever OEM can crack that, the car will sell based on that. So the exterior looks, coming back to your basic question, the exterior looks will give way to internal experience for sure. That is going to happen. And interior looks is okay. जो दिखता है वो बिकता है, of course, is valid. But even if it looks great, but it doesn't offer a great experience, you're going to be in trouble. So I think the game changing, that's going to change, and that's going to be a driving factor for actually owning a car and the buying decision for a car. So cockpit of the future is therefore an enabler to hit that. Yeah.
I think no manufacturer would admit that they have made an ugly car, but we have some very ugly cars on the road. I think similarly, there is so much happening inside the cabin that some of it will probably be a little too much, and some of it will be absolutely necessary. Mr. Iyer, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Are manufacturers now more receptive to any quirky idea that you may come up with, and are they willing to pay more for that?
Well, it's a tricky question. They're not willing to take every quirky idea that we have, obviously. But I think maybe I will expand the answer if you don't mind, right?
I'm very tempted to ask you which quirky ideas were rejected.
We may need another 1 hour session on that alone. But, look, I think, see, when we're talking about, technology in the automotive space, for a long time it has trailed, consumer electronics. Right? So consumer electronics and technology in that area seems to be pushing the cutting edge of technology, and automotive technology, definitely in the past has been following at least by a decade on that. I mean, there are various reasons for it, right? And things that you can do, let's say, when you interact with the consumer device are maybe not so possible when you're interacting within a car. So various advances in technology are now are actually bridging that gap that has existed between accessing consumer devices and accessing technology in the car. So what I'm trying to get to, in this is that now there is more than ever within the automotive industry the willingness to experiment, the willingness to try new things, because we have other technologies that will protect even in the case of failure, right? Or if something goes wrong, then you're not so worried about the repercussions because you have advanced driver assistance systems, you have safety security systems. And of course, if you're talking about autonomous driving, then it's a completely different ballgame. But because of this, the automotive world is now really pushing the envelope when it comes to technology and innovation. And I think that going forward in the next few years, I think this is, at least in my view, and I'm really happy that and that's one of the main reasons I'm happy I'm part of the automotive world, is I think automotive technology is going to start to push the envelope and really be on that cutting edge of innovation, even more than consumer electronics. And that will result in many more quirky ideas. And I feel like going forward, OEMs will be much more inclined to say yes to those quirky ideas than they were in the past, because the fear of failure is coming down, in my opinion, and that's technology enabled.
So expect some very quirky, crazy cars in future. Mr. Verma, you were about to say something about what all quirkiness could be in the offing. Can you give us some examples?
Yeah,
What is next?
I'll actually give you an example, and it's very relevant because at least the four players here have collaborated on it as well as others. So, many years ago, Maruti as well as Tata gave MapmyIndia a chance to be part of the vehicle. And with the zest and bolt of Tata and with Maruti's many, many Nexa vehicles, our Navi Maps product was projected into the car. Now, people used to wonder what can it be used for potentially. Now, when COVID struck, none of us had predicted COVID, right? But immediately when COVID struck, MapmyIndia started mapping out the testing, treatment, and isolation centers. And immediately in the vehicle, consumers could search and type and navigate to the nearest testing, treatment, and isolation center. When the vaccination drive started and COVID portal had to go live, the Prime Minister's office called us that there are 50,000 vaccine centers that we are rolling out on March 1st. This is 28th February or 27th February. Can you please map it and make it available as widely as possible, including on the COVID portal of Government of India? And we did that in a day, and again it was rolled out to all these systems. So the fact that OEMs, the system suppliers like HARMAN and companies such as ours collaborated, this means that consumers could get a very, very useful, very, very valuable unforeseen capability, which could really dramatically help it. And Mercedes used this to kind of launch the vehicle, make a big hue and cry about the connected service, etc. But really, it was something genuinely useful. Now, how we look at quirky ideas now, at least for the future, is kind of pre-trip, during trip, and post-trip. How can we kind of make this experience amazing for the user so that they can navigate or reach their destination safely, conveniently, efficiently, and so on? So I'll give you a few examples. We have been creating 360-degree street views for lakhs of kilometers across the country in the last year, since the geospatial policy of the Government of India came out, which said that Indian entities should do this, foreign entities should not, but it would be a very useful service, these 360-degree views and high-definition maps. So sitting here right now, I can see kind of how the Goa beach would look like, or if I'm looking to buy a property somewhere, in some other city, or I'm navigating for a road trip up to the hills, how that road would look like. Now that kind of embedded experience in a vehicle could dramatically improve the kind of fun element. We are talking about metaverse now, right? So with these embedded navigation, embedded high resolution 3D, 4D, HD kind of maps, which can be either in the infotainment screen, or it can be in the rear seat for somebody, or it can be in the HUD. This is kind of something interesting where we can bring the metaverse inside a real world metaverse I'm talking about, which is very useful and valuable. So that's another quirky idea, maybe. But you never know what the value of that could happen with all sorts of applications. You could have kind of group navigation, avatars kind of meeting together. In the navigation, the vehicle could look different. It could have your personality. So like that, there could be many crazy ideas, and there are also some very, very useful, valuable, mission-critical ideas. We're talking about ADAS now, where it's not so much the maps or the cockpit used for the making the driver aware. It's for making the car more intelligent and to prevent an accident. Yesterday, we were talking a little bit about how we offer speed camera, speed breaker alerts, kind of inside the navigation to help prevent an accident. So these are some things.
So I'm tempted to throw this question to each of you about what are the two crazy ideas that you think are going to come in the next 10, 15 years inside the vehicle. Very quickly, if you can, without giving your competitive edge away and not telling us what you are actually doing, which others might not be. Mr. Khokar, beginning with you. Two ideas that you think are going to become mainstay in the next 15 years.
Yeah, I think it would be when the car can probably prompt you or advise to you how to keep your wife happy.
I think the car will also give up in this case.
I think 10 years from now, probably just like the mobile revolution, it was a mobile which was used to talk primarily, is a different way of treating the mobile today. Talking is only a fraction of all the activities do with the mobile. Similarly, probably the car of the future would be that this can make you mobile. I mean, you can drive the car. It could be so many other things.
Driving is only one part of the car. It's not the main part as it is today. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is not such a crazy idea. I'll be honest, but I think in the future, right, this concept of hardware upgradability. I mean, we're talking a lot about software, but I do think that in the not too distant future, we will have the capability to basically plug and play a hardware and upgrade our hardware solutions within a car. If I can make a bold prediction, I think in the next 2 or 3 years, we will have this capability. So we'll be happy to show you what we're doing in that area as well.
Just like that crazy BMW video that we saw, which changes colors all by itself. I think it sounds very crazy, but could become very mainstay going forward. Similarly, who knows what can happen inside the car.
If I can just add one more, this is also not so crazy, but we didn't really talk about this, right? But when we talk about intelligence and safety, I think this is an important aspect as well, right? The in-car, now we have so many cameras and sensors and all of that. Most of it is outside facing, but moving forward, we will have more and more inner facing cameras, right? So things that, let's say, traditionally would need, say, a sensor, like even your seat belt sensor, you don't need, because now if you have a camera, you can actually see if the person is wearing the seatbelt or not, and we can save on that cost. Things like driver distraction, drowsiness monitoring. I think these are extremely interesting features as well, right? So I think the cars of the future and not too distant future will recognize, our emotions, whether that's drowsiness or distraction or joy or sorrow or whatever, and then customize the entire experience around our feelings and emotions and things like that. So I think that's another area where we will start to see some really, really cool, interesting stuff going forward.
Or fingerprint replacing the key, for example. That can very well happen. We are on the home stretch of this summit. After this session, there is only one more session left, and I know many of you probably have flights to catch, some of our panelists also, so we will have to do a hard stop, but we have some time for a few questions. So the floor is open. And okay, like yesterday, let's start with the backbenchers first. Right at the back in the corner.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Manoj Negi from T Connectivity, and my question is to Mr. Tapan and Mr. Randeep. So, if you were seeing, if you will see, there are a lot of changes which are happening in automotive industries, from cafe norms, then BS62, RD is also going to come soon, then EBP, that is flexi fuel, then companies are also investing in CNG, hybrid, and electric vehicles. And while dealing with the CAFE norms, they're reducing the weight of the vehicle. And then in the meantime, crash test also came. So they have to make sure that the body should be intact. So do you believe that because of so many changes, because at the end of the day, the OEM has a limited budget. So we are not able to invest so much on the R&D of cockpit and data and connectivity, digital connectivity, something like that, which is, these kind of changes, these kind of things which which OEMs has to cater, so they have to put down less of their energy on the digital and connectivity.
Where is the cockpit in the priority order?
I don't think there is a prioritization difference between various aspects that you talked about. One is the powertrain aspect which you talked about, which is driven by CAFE or the RD norms, and you will have a multiple powertrain options, and different OEM will have different strategy in terms of which powertrains they want to choose and which powertrains they want to progress. But that's a powertrain option. Safety is a regulatory item which have to be met. So there is no choice about that. Okay, you have to make your body structure stronger. You have to make your body structure, resilient to ensure that you are meeting all the required safety norms. But like we discussed, the question which Sumant asked about exterior design, interior design, and the experiences Mr. Khokar talked about, I think the car as an integrated object need to be seen, and therefore I don't see there is a lesser priority or lower priority as far as the interior or cockpit development is concerned. Rather, that's going to be more and more prominent while we are developing powertrains and meeting the safety-related regulations.
Yeah, for sure, I second completely what was just been said. There's really no dearth of, let's say, investment capex, towards this area, which is an emerging area. It's pretty hot, as recognized, and it will receive its due.
I think it also depends on what the consumer is asking for. If the consumer asks for more of interior specifications, then it will automatically show up in the R&D spends as well. Questions, Mr. Nabil Khan.
Sorry, I should have given an opportunity to the delegates, but I'm tempted to ask one thing to Mr. Sahoo and Mr. Khokar. We see the software content increasing in the cars. We do a lot of minor modification and minor model changes and launch vehicles. Do you think, like the way Tesla, unlocks some of the features through over the air, do you think now it's time, very close, that we will see all these kind of MMC changing into over the air updates and we'll have those kind of launches now?
It's a definite possibility, and it will happen sooner than you expect. I think just wanted to distinguish. We had some earlier interesting discussions as well. The receptiveness of OEMs to different ideas about updates and different crazy things. Simple point we need to understand that car is a vehicle, car is an object which is taking live human beings. We take people from place A to place B, and therefore safety becomes the most critical factor in decision making. While designing the vehicles or while you look at various interesting design options or anything else for that matter. So if an idea is not impacting safety of the occupants or safety of the vehicle, can be taken on board, experimented, you can do X, Y, Z things. But anything impacting safety, the OEMs will think twice, thrice, or 5 times before they take that on board and integrate in the vehicle. That has been my experience. I think but otherwise, I think over the air for other things, which is nice to have, good to have things, not impacting safety or not impacting the basic function of the vehicle, start, stop and turn. These are 3 basic functions. You start, you stop and turn. So these are the three functions. If you're not impacting, you will find a lot of updates over the air very, very soon.
It's a heavily regulated industry which you are working in. You try to do something, there's some rule which stops you from doing it. So that's why the pace is not as much as we would like it to be. It's relatively slow because of the safety reasons and all that. And perhaps there's no other industry which is more regulated than than the automotive. So making running changes, like for example, Tesla does for changing the way the vehicle is controlled or handled. So that will not be possible in India because it would not have passed the area test with that configuration and all those kind of things, right? So sending software for updating a given electronic control unit in the car, technology exists. I think all of us can do that. Which one would we want to adventure with first is only the question. The one which are in the convenience category will be the first candidates to receive software updates. Anything to do with safety, it's always, be careful. But the trend has started. Whatever you hear about the nice wow things that Tesla has done, that is happening also in the other places. The trend has started. It will keep on happening.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Bhavdeep Kaur and I represent KDC India, which is into luxury cars and coaches. So my question to the panel is, how seriously is air purification being taken? I know you're talking about electricals, designing, maps, that's interesting. But we have lots of our guests, customers who come in and expatriates, foreign nationals, which we did a repatriation. Everybody was very concerned on air purification. There's been change to COVID germ protection. That's another in thing which is there. But how seriously are we taking it in the car zone, and how much can we achieve in terms of a protection from both of these?
Very interesting question, I think, but air purification is not a problem which happened just because of COVID. I think many of you may not be knowing, but we have been providing cabin air filters for a long time to come. I think, and most of our vehicles are today equipped with PM 2.5 filter, which was a problem in Delhi or in many other cities in the country. We have PM 2.5 filter for basic purified air. And further to that, I think with respect to, you can say, bacteria free or something, that's something which is a matter of future. But air purification is definitely a matter of concern both for the occupant of the vehicle as well as for all the passengers.
So another thing is, supposing I've got an air filter in my room and I know exactly it's reached a green level and we're at 20 and so that's something which I have not even seen it in the luxury cars so far. We've got a fleet of luxury cars in our range. But is that something which is measurable in the vehicles as well? And how protected are we?
It is measurable, but today, I mean, at least
I'll take that.
Yeah, please.
So the AQI, as we are air quality index that we are used to hearing, Delhi mein itna pollution hai, idhar udhar, those figures which come about. So AQI measurement inside the car is possible to do, and based on that, then certain actions, if the car is capable of doing, then it is also possible to do even today. In fact, I think in Tata vehicles it's already there. So you can also see it on the app, the air quality inside my car is so and so and all that. So it only means nothing but adding of a sensor. So technology-wise, it all exists. It is nothing great to do. It's just that whenever you add certain features, the cost starts going up, and then you have to look for people. Are they really there to? You said we are dealing with luxury people. For them, it's small money, but then you have to think. So our flagship vehicles like Harrier, Safari, and all, we provide that, and the figure comes out on the infotainment system and all. In fact, one of the things I mentioned about was senses. When I talk about senses, was also smell. So if you want to provide a great experience, not just purification, you can actually create, different kind of smells in the car, which will be liked by the occupant. Maybe the left side person on the co-driver seat wants X smell, I'm not an expert in perfumes. I would have rattled out those names, but on the right side, the other smell. So, but this is possible to do. There are ways of dispensing this into the air ducts through which the air comes out, the air conditioning air comes out. So these are technologies which are existing already. It's a question of you put it only when somebody wants to pay for it. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So in a nutshell, it is coming. It is coming very soon.
As Mr. Sahoo has very rightly said, that car is for transportation. That is the primary requirement. And in the excitement, we are forgetting that with all the features the panel has discussed, where will the price of the car will go? Maruti is making their bread and butter through the Altos, not through Ciaz. So what will happen to the cost? It's very interesting to talk about these features. But I think all the big guns of the Indian auto industry will have to keep it in mind, the price of all these gadgets which we are talking about.
You want to comment?
Okay, you probably addressed that them, but I will answer. So if you ask me today, right, the perception around cost will change. And if you ask me, it's already changing.
Please understand that India is an absolute price-sensitive market.
It completely agrees. No question about it.
आइडियाज खरीदते हैं तो उसमें पूछता है ये कितना देता है, कितने किलोमीटर देता है। आइडियाज खरीदते समय में हम लोग ये पूछते हैं।
So no, everything you say is correct. I understand how emotional Indians get when we start talking about cost and all of that. Price sensitivity is not lost. See, to me, I think one is the ground reality of today and what it is tomorrow, right? And I think in tomorrow's world, the things that will be most important, and as a result, most, from a value perspective, be the highest is time and data. So I think those are really the gold or the oil of the future. And I think with all of these technologies, right, I think those are the two things that you can maximize on. Today, the time that you spend in your car, you're only spending driving. You don't do anything else. But if you can use that time productively, whether it is something related to work, or even if it is just relaxing and catching a movie or listening to something else, you've gained time that otherwise you would have spent, especially in Indian traffic conditions, which is in hours, can now be utilized more productively. So that's one on time where you save. And the second is data, right? So we had multiple sessions early on today talking about data and the opportunities that it presents. I mean, data and data analytics is the oil of today and tomorrow. And with all of this connectivity and information sharing, I think the amount of data that we are able to generate will create many more monetization opportunities for everybody in the ecosystem, which will hopefully then drive down the overall cost when you go to purchase a car. So I think that's how I would try to rationalize the additional spend.
I'd just like to add one comment. I think I could not agree more than what you said. India is a price-sensitive market or cost-sensitive market, and I think we need to have a hierarchy of things for different segment of vehicles for sure. And as Maruti, we believe in democratization. What I'm saying is that it's not going to happen in every vehicle tomorrow, but it will start somewhere. And if supplier partners, they are able to reduce cost, we will be in a position to democratize the technology and bring it down even to the auto level. It's a volume and cost equation, very simple. But it's going to happen over a period of time. But I think there we need support of all the strong partners here and also outside this
I
room.
like this tug of war between OEMs and
No,
supplier
but-
partners. But let's not forget.
Actually, I'll just add
Yes, please.
the value of software, to be honest, is you create value, but it's not necessarily that it adds too much cost.
Correct.
Actually, that's what's interesting about. Yes, we are cost sensitive, but we also want some value for money. So I think that's the value of software. That actually you don't add too much cost, especially when there's larger volumes, and but you are able to elevate the experience. So totally, I think in that sense, I think OEMs and their suppliers are quite aligned on this. We understand it's a reality of India. We have to operate in this reality, but at the same time, we also want India to be ahead of the rest of the world, not lagging far behind. So I think we are in that. We are with you, sir.
Let's not forget India's best-selling car is not the cheapest car in the country. So yes, maybe consumer preference is also changing. We have run out of time entirely. There are 2 times the bell has already rung. So we'll have to wrap it up here. But thank you so much, the audience and also all the panelists. It was a pleasure interacting with you. And see you next time. Thank you.